Hi, this is Pete with Let's Play Salesforce, and today we're going to be interviewing Mark Tossell. Mark, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Mark Tossell, as Pete said, and I am the digital business analyst at Infusion 360, and we are a wealth management business, a small business in Sydney, Australia.
All right, so what was your analytics solution prior to Einstein Analytics, and what motivated the change?
So we implemented Salesforce Financial Services Cloud at the end of last year, and we were using the standard Salesforce reports and dashboards, and we are really pushing the envelope, we think, as far as analytics go for a small business. We're very much committed to data-driven decision making. And I found myself hitting a bit of a wall with particularly the dashboards in Salesforce. I spoke with our solutions engineer at Salesforce, and he recommended we try out Einstein Analytics, and that's what started the journey.
And did you consider any other tools, or was it just we went with this one and it seemed like the right direction?
I did look at some other tools, but I'm very new to the tech space, so I don't have a lot of exposure to really what's out there. I looked briefly at, I think it's Power BI, but of course, being deeply entrenched in the Salesforce ecosystem and having done a couple of Trailhead modules around Einstein Analytics, it looked pretty cool, so I decided to look into it.
And now, why did you choose to self-implement as opposed to using a partner?
Well, my story is probably a little bit unusual in that I was hired just over a year ago to implement Financial Services Cloud, and I had no training or experience. So I'd been through the self-implementation journey before, and after the first 3 months, which were pretty terrifying, it actually ended up being quite an exciting journey. So I was keen to self-implement. We did get a quote from a consultant. I actually had trouble finding a consultant that implemented Einstein, but we found one, but his quote was pretty high. I think it was 500 hours, about 60,000 US dollars, just to build 4 dashboards. And that was beyond our reach. And I guess having learned and implemented Financial Services Cloud, having learned and somewhat mastered Pardot, I love learning new stuff. I felt fairly confident that I could learn it, so I jumped in.
Now, what are some best practices on deciding if self-implementation is the right path for you?
Look, probably one of the biggest factors for us is that we had someone in our business that is capable of learning it and committed to implementing it. Also someone that understands the business. Plus for us, I imagine if we were a much larger company with deeper pockets and, we were in a hurry, probably we would have gone with a implementation partner. But, we're a business of about 12 people. And, for us, it was just, the way to go. As far as best practices go, I think that you want to have, if you're going to have someone self-implement, they need to have someone that has not only the aptitude, but probably a proven track record around the ability to manage the project, to master the technology. And honestly, personally, my opinion, Pete, is if you're going to have someone self-implement and they're new to it, they really have to love the tech. They have to be passionate. They have to be excited. They have to really be willing to just dive in. And that's how it worked out for us. But if you don't have someone like that, or if you're in a hurry and you do have the resources, you probably want to go with an implementation partner, I would say.
So what are some of the pros and cons around self-implementation, kind of expanding off of what you were already saying?
Yeah, I gave that some thought. I think that the biggest pro would be that, and just learning from our story, Pete, is that I know our business. So I understand our processes. I know what drives our business. I know how to measure the failure and success of our business, of course, along with our CEO, Neil. So he and I have worked very closely together on building out the analytics, the dashboards in Einstein. For us to bring on an implementation partner, yes, they know the technology, but they really most likely would not understand our business. They might even be new to the small business environment, which of course is quite different to the corporate environment. They wouldn't know our processes. They wouldn't understand the KPIs that we use to measure the health of our business. So, for example, the other day, I decided to build a dashboard that I hadn't been asked to build. My boss hadn't requested it, but I just saw a need in the business for that dash, and it was around our automated processes. So a very niche dash, as it were, very particular, very focused. And I brought that up in a meeting last week, and it was really useful. Well, the reason that it was because I know our business, whereas if you bring someone in, they're not going to have that understanding. Probably, I would say another pro is that you retain that skill set within the business. So if we want to build more dashboards, refine our dashboards, if we want to expand our analytics in any way, then we now have that skill set. Whereas, of course, if you have an implementation partner, pretty much when they've fulfilled their scope of work, they're done. And then if you wanted to build more, you'd have to work out another scope of work. You'd have to negotiate again, obviously pay more, etc. I think another pro of self-implementation has been for us that it's exciting for us as a company to know that we've built this. And I don't know if that really makes sense, but as a small business, it's been a big win for us in really the small business environment, at least in Australia. Most small and medium-sized businesses do not have much in the way of analytics. So for us to have actually embraced the technology, built out our own analytics, it's working, it's growing our business, it's exciting. That's a very big win for us. As far as the cons go, I was going to say timing, but really I think we were quoted 500 hours or over 3 months to build the dashboards, whereas it took me part-time, balancing my other responsibilities with Pardot and Salesforce and marketing and the website design and other things I'm working on. It took me, I think, 2 months. I think it took me about 200 hours, Pete, from the start to learn the system, to implement it, integrate it, and build the 4 dashboards. So actually, at least in our case, it probably actually ended up being quicker, but I don't know that would always be the case. It would depend on the scenario. And also another pro is that, we saved a lot of money by not going with that partner. Obviously, I only got 1 quote, and I think it was somewhat exorbitant. If I would have shopped around, I might have got a more reasonable estimate. But, it was way cheaper self-implementing than it would have been to have gone with that.
So how has the learning curve been? I noticed recently that you posted some SQL queries. It's pretty cool to see that you've made it that far. But how has it been overall, just going from like 0 to here?
Yeah, look, I love learning. To me, it's just fun. It's exciting. I enjoy the challenge. I'm very stubborn, so I don't tend to give up when I'm trying to learn something new. So, obviously you've got to put in the effort and the hours. So for me, a lot of the learning, it was a bit of an unusual story, actually, Pete, to backtrack a little bit. I had minor surgery a few weeks ago, probably about, I guess, actually maybe 7 or 8 weeks ago. So I was laid up after surgery and wasn't able to come into the office. So I actually took the first week, I had a few days to recover. Then I took that next entire week and devoted myself to Einstein Analytics. So I would guess maybe 50 hours focusing on nothing else but learning Einstein, trying to build my first dashboard. Probably the one big challenge for me with the learning curve that others may not have is that we're on Financial Services Cloud, Pete. So our Einstein Analytics license comes with our Salesforce licenses, and it's a limited license. So when I did the Trailhead badges, of course, it's got in there the Sales Analytics app, the Service Analytics app, and those are amazing. And, they come with Einstein Analytics. It takes you through a wizard. You configure it. And really, I think within, I would guess, a couple of days or something, you could have some amazing apps up and running. So when we when we implemented the Analytics Cloud, and I remember, kind of booting it up and looking at it, and I enabled the permission sets, and it was running. And I jumped in and I couldn't find the sales and the service analytics apps. And I thought I'd made a mistake. So I got a hold of support. I said, look, these apps aren't appearing. Did I not configure the permission sets correctly? And actually they came back and said, because you're on a limited license, you don't have access to the sales and service analytics apps. And I was pretty gutted because I had relied on those to kind of shorten the amount of time, but it actually ended up being a blessing in disguise, Pete, because it forced me to build all of our dashboards from scratch, which meant that I learned a great deal more than I ever would have learned if I would have had those standard apps to work with. The learning curve for me has been, honestly, not too bad because I haven't had to do a lot of code. That was probably my main concern before I jumped in, was that I'd have to write a lot of code. And as you know, I don't have a background in that, and I'm learning it, but it would have slowed down the learning curve. But most of what I've built has been using the UI, has been point and click. So that, I think that enabled me really, from start to finish, like I said, a couple of 100 hours, maybe 4 or 5 weeks of full-time work it would have been to learn it and build it. I will say this, Trailhead and the blogs and help from people like yourself and others in the community have really made this possible. I don't know how I would have done it without that. And honestly, it's been a blast. It's been fun. I work with Salesforce, I work with Pardot, I work with Einstein, but my favorite of those three now is Einstein. And I just really get a kick out of building stuff that impacts the business almost instantly.
So from a documentation and Trailhead perspective, what are some features that you feel could use some better coverage?
Look, overall, the documentation is excellent. It's very comprehensive. Trailhead, I think, is great. I know they've got a lot more on the drawing board for the future, and I think they do need more modules for those that are serious about particularly self-implementing, as we have done. I would say, Pete, the only area that I feel like I've struggled as far as the pace of learning has been around JSON and SQL. And they actually really intrigue me. And as you know, I've dived in a little bit into those. I'd love to see some Trailhead modules around JSON and SQL. The reason being just to have a structured system for learning them. So obviously, there is quite a lot of documentation out there around JSON and SQL, and I've been using that. And there are some great blogs. I know that, for example, Andrew Price has a great blog, and the lady that, her name, I pronounce it Ricky, but I don't think that's correct. Her blog is excellent. But yeah, to have a more structured learning system or curriculum around JSON and SQL probably would be the one area of education that I would love to see. But other than that, it's been very comprehensive and extremely useful for me as a self-learner, self-implementer.
Little shameless self-promotion here. Check out the Binding Basics series if you want to get into some JSON.
That was actually, that was actually because I jumped on YouTube and just, Googled Einstein Analytics, etc. Your videos, I reckon that was the first week that I started watching those. And I got to be honest, because I didn't know the system yet at all, when I first watched Binding Basics, it completely blew me away. But it's funny now, 2 months later, I watched that. And of course, now it makes sense and I understand it, and it's incredibly helpful. But it was really cool, like when I first watched your videos, just seeing, to me, it showed me what the system could do, because I was at that stage where I really didn't even know what it could do. And so, yeah, I really appreciate your materials as well.
What are some really crucial features that you think are just barely out of reach for Clicks Not Code users that you'd like to see get some enhancements in future releases?
If you would have asked me that a month ago, there would have been probably a number of things. But honestly, I can only speak, Pete, from the perspective of a small business. It's a complex business. I will say that our business is not a simple business at all. But I would say now, because they've made, as you know, so many improvements in the new release that just came out. In fact, I was working on it yesterday, and I'm about to build out some pages, which I think are pretty cool, that new feature. Really, there's, in my opinion, at least at my level, Pete, there's not a lot. I wouldn't say there are any crucial features for me that are out of reach. And again, I'm still very new to the system, so there may be capabilities and features that I'm not aware of. I will say this, one thing that one object or one widget I wanted to build recently was I wanted to take 4 different objects and build a like a correlation chart. And I got some help from a guy in the community, and he's actually helping me with that. But it involves a fair bit of code, joining objects in SQL and things like that. That's probably one of the first things that I've come across that I really wanted to build, that my boss has asked for from a business perspective would be useful, that I'm not able to build in the UI. But I think they've made, I'm not sure. I would even be interested in your perspective on this, being far more experienced. But with the new release and the new features, there really aren't a lot of things that I need to do that I can't do without code. And again, I'd be interested to know your thoughts on that. But that's kind of where I'm at.
I mean, if I had to pick one off the top of my head, it would be the limit parameter. So, for example, if I want top 10, I have to edit JSON for that. And there's there's a really valid use for that, and it's because of the native limit of like 2,000 rows, and there's a lot of, because immediately people are going to say, well, I want to increase the limit on a values table to 1 million or something absurd like that, and so there's kind of a reason behind that, but that would be the first one that pops to mind for me.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So you mentioned the community, and as of today, it's now called the Salesforce Trailblazer community. I think when I went to bed last night, it was still called the Customer Success community. But how has?
Oh, okay. I didn't even know about that. So there you go.
Yeah, it's ruining my folder sorting rules. But how has your involvement in this community kind of enhanced or altered how this experience would have been for you otherwise?
Yeah, look, not even, I wouldn't even say, not only in the aspect of my journey around analytics, but right from the start, from the middle of last year, when you're hired and you don't have any Salesforce experience or training at all, and you've never even touched it, and you're supposed to build an org, very heavily customized and process automation and, 15 custom objects and everything else. It really was terrifying, and I learned right at the start that there are people out there that are really willing to give, and they don't have an ulterior motive. They're not getting paid a bonus or a referral fee or a consultant fee, or these are people that, for example, Pete, with the time change, I've had people get on Skype at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the evening American time, in order to help me, build out, for example, an NPS feedback system. When it came to the Einstein analytics, just the fact that there are people like you and others in the community. I'm trying to remember some of the names. There was, I think it was Carl Brundage was another one. Like through the community, I found that I get an answer always in less than 24 hours, which is amazing when you think that it's volunteer for the most part. It's mostly not Salesforce employees. It's mostly customers. And just the ability to throw ideas out there, to ask for honest feedback, to get technical input. I've worked a long time ago. I worked with technology before in another ecosystem. And we're going back probably 25 years, but there was nothing like this at all, not even close. And I worked for another very large corporation back when I was an engineer, and the Ohana culture that that unselfish mindset is something that I have not encountered before. And I can't imagine trying to self-implement and self-learn without that. I guess it could be done, but I don't think the end result would be as good, and I think it would take a lot longer. So it's been very much indispensable in my case, and I'm forever grateful.
What are the next steps for you and Einstein Analytics?
Yeah, well, again, I feel like I'm still, I mean, I guess in a short time I've built quite a lot, but I still have a lot to learn. And again, I love to learn. So I even sent a text to my boss early this morning saying that I want to try out Pages, the new feature that they have. I want to give that a go. As you know, I'm on the start of the learning curve for JSON and SQL. So that is probably an area where I want to grow more just to be able to perform more detailed customization, and to build a few things that are tough or maybe impossible to build without code. Also for us as a business, we've seen the power of analytics for a small business. It really has transformed our business. I mean, we went from 2 years ago, we lived off of some crazy spreadsheets. Now we have our business meetings, and we have one of those large screens in the boardroom, and I bring up, for example, our One Lens business dashboard, and we run the whole meeting off that dashboard. And we make decisions based on that data for the rest of the week or even for longer term. And, the impact on our business has been tremendous. So we actually have a vision of of rolling out analytics for other small businesses. So we're actually looking, I don't know if you know this, but we're actually looking to start in the near future, probably the next few months, another business under our group around building analytics using Einstein for small and medium-sized businesses. So we are super excited about that. Obviously, I'll have a pivotal role in that. And look, it's honestly, Pete, I'm not trying to be cliche or tacky or anything when I say I love it, because I really do. To me, it's fun and it's exciting to see it have an impact on a business. And so obviously, I want to be able to apply it to different types of businesses, which will mean, I'm sure, that I'll be learning features of it that as yet I don't even know exist. And I'm sure there are plenty of those.
Before we wrap up here, you are going to be at Dreamforce 2017. So everybody, if you haven't had a chance to connect with Mark, that's probably going to be a good opportunity to do so. But regarding something that you posted on LinkedIn a month or two back, have you decided what the first restaurant you're going to eat at in San Francisco is?
So there's a standing joke around my office that I'm food mad, which is probably true. So I've been actually asking around in the community, LinkedIn and Twitter, about places to eat. And I hope I get the name right, but the right at the top of the list and the most oft mentioned place, I believe, was Tony's Pizzeria. So and I love pizza and I love Italian, so that's probably right at the top of the list. But from what I hear, San Francisco is a bit of a food mecca, Pete. So I'm pretty excited about that aspect of Dreamforce. But look, honestly, I can't wait for Dreamforce. I'm super excited. I've made so many friends, Pete, so many people that have encouraged me on my journey that I've met mostly through Twitter, actually, that I've never met in person. So a really big part of Dreamforce for me would just be meeting people and shaking their hand that have been a help to me along the way that I've never met in person before.
All right. Well, it was great talking to you. Everybody, this has been Mark Tossell, and he'll be joining us at Dreamforce 2017. So make sure to check out his blog and Twitter, which will both be linked in the comments below. And if you have any requests for videos in the future, if you would like to participate in the Community Spotlight series, please feel free to reach out to me. And as always, thanks for watching.